Hey guys, welcome to Neat Movie News. My name is Dean Thomas.
His name is Dean. We like Dean.
Dean.
And the movie I'm sure just about all of us have been eagerly anticipating literally all year is the next movie in the Star Wars universe. It's the first standalone movie we've ever gotten, and that is Rogue One, a Star Wars story.
We think you might be able to help us.
When was the last time you were in contact with your father?
What is this? It appears he is critical to the development of a super weapon.
If my father built this thing, we need to find him.
Now, I'm sure a lot of you know, but basically the general idea of this story is taken from the opening crawl of A New Hope, where it says the rebels have earned their first victory over the Empire and were able to steal the Death Star plans. Now, Rogue One simply is telling you how those rebels and who those rebels were that managed to steal the plans to the Death Star. And obviously, so going in, you know how it's going to end, but the movie still makes you care and he really gets you invested into what these rebels are doing. And this movie, it's Star Wars knows exactly what they're doing because this is a really good movie. So basically, you've got Jyn Erso, played by Felicity Jones, and her father, Galen Erso, is working for the Empire, and he is the one that has actually designed the Death Star. Now, I'm not going to give away any spoilers. You can actually get this information right from the trailer. So basically, the rebellion goes and finds Jyn so she can find her father and figure out how they may steal the plans of the Death Star and how they may destroy it or find something that they can take out the Death Star and finally start to push back the Empire, who is kind of has just started to reign over the galaxy as we then learn it to in the original trilogy. And this movie, it expands the universe perfectly. The way they add kind of new guns, new characters, new ships, new sorts of stormtroopers, it all works so well and it's so cool and interesting. There's so many new species you get to learn, and that was what I really enjoyed. And it never hampers the other movies. It never was as like, oh well, where's this? Shouldn't this be in A New Hope, or why didn't we see this in the original trilogy? The way they use these new things and just kind of sprinkle them here and there, it makes sense to you that yeah, maybe they just didn't happen to be up in those certain areas where we were exploring in the original trilogy. So I thought it worked really, really well, and then it opened up so many more possibilities of things we could see down the line. And speaking of expanding the universe, they also did a lot of fan service in this movie. There's a lot of things, if you're a fan of the original trilogy, for sure you'll catch certain lines of dialogue or certain characters or something like that, some sort of reference to something. And for the most part, it's really enjoyable. There's some times where it's like, okay, really, we probably didn't need that. It's a little too on the nose. But for the most part, I really enjoyed most of them. But for me, what stood out to me most was Felicity Jones as Jyn Erso. Now, I've had a little bit of a crush on Felicity Jones for quite a while now from some of her past work, but this movie just strengthened that because she just kicks so much butt in this movie. Her character is really interesting, and you really care about her for sure. And she brought a lot to it. And I was a little concerned because the trailers we had gotten, it was really some kind of weird and choppy dialogue from her. So I was actually most worried about her performance, and that was not a problem at all. I think the reshoots actually probably fixed that. So speaking of which, the reshoots, you don't feel them at all. There's never a problem you go, oh, I can tell that was reshot, or ooh, that didn't really work. No, the movie works incredibly well. If you didn't know there was reshoots, you would never think there was. And even as someone who knew about them, it never crossed my mind because the movie just worked really, really well. So that wasn't a problem at all. The movie is visually beautiful. From the in terms of cinematography, there's some incredible shots. There's so many shots where I would love a poster of just that shot alone. It's just they're really, really cool use of the colors and the way they shoot them from different angles. The visual effects are incredible. This movie looks great, and they do a lot of unique things, a lot of camera angles and shorter shots and things we haven't seen in the Star Wars universe before, but they feel so Star Wars in this movie. It works perfectly, which kind of goes back to expanding the universe, just in terms from a technical standpoint of how they present these movies, from how they shoot them, from the visuals they use. It's all feels, like I said, so much like just absolute pure Star Wars, but it's still new stuff and keeps it fresh at the same time. So that was just really, really cool just to look at visually. And the third act of this movie, like I said, not giving anything away, but the third act of this movie is incredible. It's so much fun. It's so just there's so much going on. You're just with these characters because they got you to care about them so much in the first two acts, and it's just so much fun to watch. There's so much going on, and like I said, I won't give anything away, but the final 5 to 10 minutes of this movie are literally perfect. I will not give anything away other than to say that you will not be able to stop smiling at the end of this movie because those final 5 to 10 minutes are absolutely perfect. And the thing they do is this movie is it adds so much to episode 4 A New Hope. There's so much to it that immediately as soon as this movie ends you want to go and watch that movie. It adds so much stuff. You really get the stakes of what it took for these Death Star plans, which really aren't presented in episode 4, but here you really get to expand on that, and you really get to feel for these characters and the sacrifices and all this hard work that they had to put in. So it adds so much to episode 4, and you immediately want to go watch it as soon as Rogue One ends. And I think the best part is with the original trilogy, it's a little bit more kind of fantastical. You're following Luke, who's got all these kind of talented force powers, but here it's just gritty. You're in the thick of things. You're just with these soldiers. It's boots on the ground. It definitely has a war movie sort of feel at times, and they don't back down from that too much. Now, it's not like a hard, like, Saving Private Ryan. Obviously not. It's a PG-13 Star Wars movie, but it's still got a little bit of a darker, grittier tone than we've seen in previous Star Wars movies. Now, not everything is perfect in this movie. I did find it a little slow at points. The first act and second act, there's some slower moments that kind of just, like I said, it does help build towards some character building, but it is a little slow. And I can't say I was bored, but I did wish the pace picked up just a little bit. I will also say that Krennic, played by Ben Mendelsohn, I thought he could have actually had a little bit more to do. There was some things where it's just like, he's kind of presented as the big bad. Just give him a little bit more to do. I also thought the score, the music, it's not John Williams, it's Michael Giacchino, who's kind of becoming like they're using him to replace a lot of John Williams stuff. And the score is good. He mixes in some familiar stuff, but it's nothing memorable. It's not great. It's not going to stick with you. It's there and it's nice while you're listening to it, but it's nothing special. So that was a little disappointing because obviously we've come to know with Star Wars to have literally the best music in cinematic history. I mean, that's hard to live up to, but the music was a little forgettable. There's a couple CGI things that I won't even say because they would be spoilers, but there's a couple times where things just look a little off with it. Like I said, for the most part, it's incredible, but there's a few things here and there, and if you see the movie, you'll know what I'm talking about. And lastly, I will say this. Obviously, the trailers present Darth Vader in the movie. I will say that don't expect a Darth Vader movie. He's not a main character anyway. His presence is definitely felt, but he is not a main character. He is not in it much. It is great that James Earl Jones came back and did the voice because it just feels like pure Darth Vader. And I will just stop myself there by saying anything more because anything more would be some pretty big spoilers. So I will leave it at that and get into my score of Rogue One, a movie that I really, really enjoyed. In the third act, just really ramped things up. And like I said, that final 5 to 10 minutes might be my favorite final minutes of any movie this year for sure because it is just fantastic. So for me, I'm going to give Rogue One an 89%. Star Wars knows what they're doing. At this point, they're just kind of a well-oiled machine. You can expect some pretty great things out of them. I did have some problems here and there, and I will definitely say I enjoyed The Force Awakens more, and I think that's because in a way I was supposed to, because we're going to be following that story and those characters for, another 2-3 movies, who knows more. But overall, Rogue One is a really great Star Wars movie that really expands the universe, really adds a lot to Episode 4, which is just a fantastic thing that they did. They give a lot of fan service, and there's some incredible moments in this movie that may be some of my favorite moments in Star Wars movie history. I will definitely say that for sure. So like I said, I will give Rogue One an 89%. Well, there you guys have it. That's my review of Rogue One, a Star Wars story.
We'll take the next chance. And the next. You're rebels, aren't you?
Save the rebellion! Save the dream!
Make sure you follow me on Twitter at NeatMovieNews for all the latest in the world of movies. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we will see you back here next time.